Welcome everybody to the pitching room. My name is Luke Richards and today we are joined by my wonderful friend who is also a performer and from what I've been told, a wrestler in training, Kerry Ely. Yeah, as soon as I messaged you, you're literally like, oh yeah, and also mentioned I was a wrestler. Oh, I was in training.
You know.
So Kerry, welcome to the pitching room.
Nice to be here. Thank you, Luke.
Oh, fantastic. So for those who are only just watching, The Picture Room is a show where we give films that were unmade or were film concepts a second chance to come to life. So if I told you that there was a Rambo film with werewolves, Kerry, would you like to go see that film?
Why not? With a very big bucket of popcorn.
Oh, fantastic. Well, unfortunately, that film was never made. But on this show, we give second life to those projects. So, Kerry, I'm just wondering, like, when I was looking for you, I asked if you wanted to do this particular project, and I actually think you were the perfect fit for it because you told me that you are a big fan of vampire films or of that genre. I like to ask that cheesy question: have you heard of a film called The Lost Boys?
Michael and Sam have just moved to Santa Carla, California. They're about to discover its secret.
Michael, they're coming! Oh, shit!
It's up there in my top 5 of favourite vampire films ever. So yeah, a little bit.
Oh, fantastic. So for those who don't know, The Lost Boys is a film from 1987, which was directed by the late Joel Schumacher, and it is literally the definitions of a pure 80s vampire film. It's got mullets, it's got leather jackets, it's got bouncing soundtrack, and you can't talk about The Lost Boys without talking about Tim Capello and his sexy saxophone playing.
It is sad where he didn't make it. Well, he made it into one of the sequels, but I don't think you see him in the third one, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't think that's him. I think because the guy who in the failed, like the rubbish sequel, is actually, I think it's supposed to be a fat guy pretend to be Tim Capello.
I thought that was the joke of it, but I thought that was the real saxophone guy. That was just a random actor. Oh, mate, could those films get any worse?
Is this just a suck monkey?
What he's trying to say is, we're vampires.
Oh, scary.
No, but seriously.
We're vampires.
Yes, that was the tipping point. That was the final straw. I'm just like done now with them.
The Lost Boys, it's everything. It's a horror film. It's a coming of age drama. So it's just that definition. And when I first saw it, I think I saw it when I was in my teens. It's the poster that gets you. It's a very iconic poster. You know, it's just that the red background silhouette and the infamous saying, you know, sleep all day, party all night, never grow old, never die. It's fun to be a vampire. So yeah, and that was my fascination to the film. What was your first experience with The Lost Boys? Like, what was the attraction to the film?
Vampires. You had me at vampires. Always been into my gothic literature, Dracula, all the other vampire films that were out there. So I eventually got around to watching The Lost Boys, and there is something special about this vampire film. It's got it all. It's got the music, it's got fashion, the sexiness of all the Lost Boys. Where most of them, not all of them were actors, some of them were models. They all know how to hold themselves, and they're all very appealing to watch. And they've got the vampire-ness, they've got that allure, the whole blood drinking metaphor alluding to sex. It's oozing just everything, really, hasn't it?
Indeed. I mean, there's so many symbolisms in that film. I watched this film last week with my partner, and she's never seen this film. She's only heard me mention it. It's like, you know what, let's just watch this film. And it's, what's the hype about this? And it's just like, well. And we just watched it, and she was just like amazed. It's that style, it's that fashion. And the cave itself is literally like a hotel about itself. And you got the Jim Morrison, the Lizard King himself. The chandelier, and it's just that sense of rebellion. The reason Joel Schumacher did this film is because in the 70s, vampires weren't as very attractive in a sense. They weren't that appeal. They were still your grandparents popping the coffin, stabbing the heart, dressed like they're from the 18th century. I think they came to a point of parody.
My mind is gone. I want your blood. I want your blood. Kill me.
But and then Joel Schumacher came with the idea of what happens if we reinvent it? What we brought the vampires to the 80s, and we got this beauty of a film.
I heard somewhere, I don't know how true this is, but they were originally, The Lost Boys was kind of going to be a Goonies style film, hence they mention Goonies a lot. And Schumacher? No, not
Joel
Schumacher?
Joel Schumacher?
Joel Schumacher. Just, he pitched the idea out there, what if they were a bit older and it had that sex appeal? And that's how we thankfully got The Lost Boys we all know.
Exactly. It does show the strength of Schumacher as a filmmaker. As much as we'd like to bash him about making Batman and Robin,
Killed the dinosaurs. The Ice Age.
and Batman Forever,
The car, right? Chicks love the car.
and later on in his career, you have to remember, like, Joel Schumacher was a really great director. I mean, originally he was a hairdresser, he was openly gay, but he never held that back. He just made films that he knew appealed to the youth. And you got St. Elmo's Fire, and you've got, obviously, The Lost Boys. But then, as the decade went on, he got more, like, very serious and political. So we got films like A Time to Kill, which deal about race, Flatliners, which question life and death. He just knew how to make a really good film. Whether you liked it or not, you could see his sharpness as a director. I mean, what's your views as Schumacher as a director?
I'm not the biggest Schumacher fan, so I've not really seen any of his other films. I can't compare. But this film, there's characters, and not really going into depth for The Lost Boys. We don't hear much about their story, but their presence when they're on screen. Basically, their dialogue is just the name Michael.
This is Michael.
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 Michael, 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 Michael.
Michael.
Yeah.
But you can't help but like feel you want to be part of that gang. They're free, and there's something about them, and the way Schumacher presents them to us, we want to be part of that cool gang. It's mysterious, and I think it's intriguing, and it's something that the sequels, they don't capture that, and it's a real shame.
Indeed, because you just got a very popular cast at the time. You know, you got the two Corey Haim, Corey Feldman, you've got a young Kiefer Sutherland, Jason Patrick, Alex Winter from Bill and Ted is in this film. And the film was distributed by Warner Brothers. It was made on a budget of $8.2 million, and it was a massive commercial and financial hit, raking around 32 million. That big, does really well. The potentials of sequels is inevitable, really, and especially in the 80s, where it was the decade of sequels, especially in the horror genre. Unfortunately, there was so much potential for a sequel that we didn't get it, and this is what leads into our next segment, which is the film that never was. Right, what have I told you that Schumacher wanted to make a sequel to The Lost Boys called The Lost Girls?
Oh, just the title, I cringe. I immediately cringe. I mean, I want to see films with female leads being awesome and being cool, but just to make it for the sake of making it to be the sequel to Lost Boys, I just couldn't imagine there could be a story worth telling that's just Lost Boys, but with girls.
It does come off as a bit of a stick and paste job for the film. Schumacher was very passionate to get the sequel made. I think he had a really great time with making The Lost Boys. For what we can do next is, because most of them, and spoiler, most of them die in this film. The idea was somehow David, Kiefer Sutherland's character, survives.
Somehow being impaled and exploding. Somehow he survived that.
Yeah, I know, getting impaled, but somehow he survives. The idea was that he creates his new army. However, he creates it from a misfit of young women, henceforth leading to Lost Girls. And what Schumacher described, it was the badass chicks on motorcycles ripping up Santa Carla, and it was up to the Frog Brothers and Grandpa. I can put emphasis on Grandpa to hunt them down. And in my mind, it's like a film I would like to watch, but at the same time, I know it's going to be bad. I mean, when you hear that concept, what is your first like knee-jerk reaction? I mean, you said like you don't think it was that great, but if from what I've told you, what would be your second view?
From that, doesn't sound like there's a Michael character.
Yeah.
I think he was such an important character. He was the one the audience related to, and if we didn't have a Michael, it's just going to be a terrible long action film, just goodies v bad guys, and I don't think that's strong enough to make a film out of.
Yeah, I mean, it is an interesting concept, and Schumacher tried numerous times, at least 7 times, to get this film made, coming to an end in 1997. Because what's really funny is there's actually another sequel idea that they had for The Lost Boys, which was going to be a prequel to Lost Boys, and it was going to explore David becoming the vampire in the New World, so around the 1900s. So the idea was that he meets obviously the head vampire. He becomes, it's quite similar to the film Into a Vampire with Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt. It was going to be him discovering vampire, and literally the film leads to the end, leading up to the beginning of The Lost Boys. From that perspective, what would be your view of the Lost Boys prequel with Michael? Not Michael, sorry, David, sorry, there.
David was very sexy and very appealing in the film. If we go back and we do a whole film about him, is it just going to destroy the lovely image that we have of him? I mean, it could be interesting. The budget would have to be huge. It'd be an epic, but and it's just Lost Boys is so perfect. Why ruin it? Why go back to that?
Well, that's how the system works, unfortunately. Those were the 2 sequels that Schumacher tried to make. But overall, he was very keen on The Lost Girls. Even though I think it would have been a terrible film, if Schumacher was still involved, they would have still that potential, an okay film. Not a perfect film, but an okay film. But that didn't continue. Then Schumacher went on to make, which I think is like his returning era. So he made like 88mm Booth.
You're bluffing.
There's only one way to find out.
Oh my God, you shot him.
Look at all of the people, Stu.
He's the shooter.
I've seen him.
It wasn't me.
Clever films, and Kiefer Sutherland went off to kill terrorists in 24. But on the show, what we like to do is we like to give second life to these projects. So Kerry, now that you heard what was going to be The Lost Girls, it's time for you to bring your rendition of The Lost Girls to the pitching room. So, Kerry, welcome to the pitching room. So, as you may know, we're trying to bring back the Lost Girls. So tell us, Kerry, what is your version of the Lost Girls?
Okay, when I was younger, my favourite characters were always the kick-ass females. Buffy, Xena, Tifa from Final Fantasy VII. I also loved gothic horror and martial arts films. I could go from watching Bram Stoker's Dracula to Bruce Lee's Enter the Dragon. So with that cacophony of taste in mind, the hero of this piece, our Michael type character, let's call her Michelle. She's a vampire and an MMA fighter.
Oh, okay. Wow.
This film, it takes place in the modern day, but it's a world where vampires are now out and part of society. They do things like play on major sports teams and fight in commercial fights. And Michelle, she is training for a big MMA headliner fight. She has the support of her human girlfriend, Eve, and her vampire coach, Lucy, who is also her head vampire. Michelle's opposition is another female vampire, Danny. And pre-fight, to get under Michelle's skin, she hurts Eve. Coach Lucy calls off the fight because vampires don't need that kind of bad publicity. Michelle obviously rebels and goes ahead with the fight, ends up ripping Danny to pieces, and it's televised.
Damn.
So, Frog Brothers are called in by the officials of the sport to go after Michelle. Coach Lucy has turned her back on Michelle for going ahead with the fight, and her girlfriend Eve is frightened. She's keeping a distance from Michelle. So it's Michelle up against the Frog Brothers, all on her own. Climax of the film is Michelle fighting for survival and striving for forgiveness from those she's upset. And that's what I've come up with for my sequel to The Lost Boys. It's Lost Girls Fight for Survival.
Okay, so I mean, you literally got everything there. I mean, you got cage fun, you've got obviously a device cast, monologue. And is there anything? Would you bring back the soundtrack of Lost Boys? Because obviously, you can't go wrong with "Cry Little Sister."
I think it would fit. I think imagine some very cheesy fighting montages. We kind of establish the characters and their relationships with that iconic music in the background. I think we're onto a winner there.
Excellent. So obviously you're going to bring back the Frog Brothers. Is there any original characters that you bring back? Are you still going to go with the angle that they're going to bring David's character back, or is David dead?
David's dead. We've got Lost Girls, so it's heavily centered around the females and their relationships, but you've got the Frog Brothers. I have my way. I think they're going to be killed off. Just absolutely hate them. They're so annoying.
I don't know how that's going to hold up in my notices. You're going to kill iconic characters, because they did that with Terminator, and that didn't go well.
Well, you say kill off in a vampire film. You know, if you don't see them actually die, they can always come back as a vampire, as some other sort of undead creature.
That's a fact. Oh, definitely. From the angle that you sound, it is quite a action-packed vampire tale. So it's something quite similar to modern-day action film and like boxing film as well, because you've got MMA fighting. But it's got, I would describe like True Blood twist, like that sort of angle.
That's why we decided to make our existence known. We just want to be part of mainstream society.
Oh, True Blood. I loved that when it came out, but if you watch it back, I don't think it's aging well. I don't think the characters and the dialogue between them, I think for something like this, it's got to be, I've forgotten his name now, Kevin Smith or Russell T Davies, someone that kind of captures the cool kid speak, but yet it has some sort of timeless, it's not going to age horrendously.
Excellent. So with that in mind, who would be your ideal director for?
Right, for the action, I've forgotten his name, got it written down somewhere, Sam Mendes.
Oh, excellent. Sam Mendes.
So it's someone that can capture action and kind of like, you know, have you on the edge of your seat, especially for the cage fighting bits.
So you've got award-winning director Sam Mendes. Just going to lay it all there. So you've got director Sam Mendes as your potential director. Obviously, it's going to be a modern tale. And it's quite an interesting twist that you brought about how vampires have become more exposed and more open. Is that going to be explored in the film? Is it going to have quite a political message? Or is it just going to be, you know what, this has just happened, accept it, and let's focus on the story?
I think for me, it's I want to tell that story. It's just the vampires are now part of major sporting events. So how did that come about? It has to be some form of realism that they're accepted now. If you wanted to read the politics into it, like minority group in society, and she breaks, obviously she murders another vampire on television. So the Frog Brothers are sent after her to destroy her. So like, you know, human rights and politics, it could be read into it, but it is just meant to be a vampire action flick.
Yeah, that's what we'd like to hear, just a fun time at cinema. Before I let you go, I just want to know, in your version, will Tim Capello play his saxophone again?
Do you know what? We could have like a chase scene and she's running through dark streets, she's being chased by the Frog Brothers, and maybe the Frog Brothers trip over a saxophone and, you know, we don't see him, but it's just the fact that there's this poor, dilapidated saxophone line in the back streets.
Oh.
Slight nod to him.
Slight nod to Tim Capello's saxophone. Oh, that sounds really interesting. So, it's not to me, but it's up to the people watching. So we want to know, would you go and see Kerry's version of The Lost Girls, or would you stick to the original premise of the show? This brings us to the end of Hitch Room. I want to say a massive thank you to Kerry for being a great guest and just, you know, just fangirling about a very great iconic film, and bringing your version to the piece. And all I can say is a massive thank you again.
Thank you for having me, Luke.
My pleasure. Well, thank you very much for in Picture Room. Come join us again where we have more great concepts to bring to life. But until then, I say thank you, God bless, and thank you again to Joel Schumacher for a great and powerful film.